Oh my gosh. This is my first live stream. How awesome. I also run a boxing YouTube channel. I coach boxing here locally and we go live a couple of times every week, so I'm fairly experienced in the this live presenting portion. But this is my first time on LinkedIn, so awesome. Uh, my thoughts. I'm going to go through it and I'm going to read my post. I'm going to read my newsletter word for word all the way through. Why? Because it's short and it's not going to take that long. And then from there, I'm going to go back and I'm going to speak to the individual points, like what I was thinking. I'm going to try to provide context to the thought in general. Like where did where did that come from? I personally think visually, and transforming visual thoughts into words I can communicate to other people, super challenging. There is a downgrade in information, kind of like going from fiber to coaxial, right? Like, so what you're reading is actually just a small percentage of the total thought, the total things I was considering while I was writing this. Uh, this is awesome. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen and then yeah, I'll start reading it. Okay, awesome. Um, oh my gosh, well this is too small. I can't read it off of this screen. Oh, hey, holy cow! Yes, I can. Okay, awesome. Uh, is it your thoughts or my thoughts? What percentage of what you think is from you, and which percentage is from other influences? Example: do you like something because you like it, or because a good advertisement told you to like it? Spoiler: there's no difference. Internal perception and outside influences are one and the same, which is the point of meditation. You're supposed to isolate yourself from all the noise, right? And it's crazy hard to do, super hard to do. I don't think I've pulled off like an isolated thought, like a present thought for more than 30 seconds. Yeah. Okay. This is important to think about. I started down this path considering the influence of human gut bacteria on human worldly perception. We already know that one impacts the other. To what extent is an interesting consideration and one without a good answer? We don't know. Oh my gosh, I'm making some of this up as I go, or some of the strategy up as I go. We don't know. This is super interesting, and I will likely write another post about the human gut bacteria or the gut bacteria. Like when it's unhappy, you're unhappy. So then you take a step back. Am I unhappy, or is my gut bacteria unhappy? And that's essentially the essence of this post. How do you know? And the reality is, you don't. We just assume. Like so much of perception is nothing but just assumptions. Like it's a overlay, if that's the appropriate word. Like perception is an overlay on top of the observations, and the observations are exposed to cognitive biases. Like two people can look at the same thing and see two completely different things. Okay, where was I? I use the reality pointed out above to knock the $17 billion global customer experience CX measurement industry. Oh, measurement processes and typo. Their snake oil claims. Measuring human perception is more complex than humans realize. Ironically, supporting my complexity claim. Oh my gosh, they're good. I'm just gonna make this up as we go. Uh, why? Why is it more complex than we realize? And maybe this is another post for another day, but why as human beings don't we realize it's more complex? For me, this is one of those visual thoughts that's super challenging to communicate to other people, but there's a level of depth on it. Like everybody knows that they're awake, and everybody knows when they're sleeping. Like everybody knows when they're conscious and unconscious and whatnot. But there's a level of depth to consciousness. Like just because you're awake doesn't mean you're fully absorbing all the information that's happening around you. Just because you're sleeping doesn't mean you're not absorbing all the information that's happening around you. Like there's a level of depth. So people are aware, but they might not be fully aware of their awareness, right? Yeah, that's the challenging portion there. There's a level of depth. Just because you know it doesn't mean you know. But on the other side, it does mean that you know. Why? Because no is not defined. There's a level of depth to the word no. Ah, my gosh, I went on a rabbit hole here. I'm gonna go back. Starting over. I use the reality pointed out above to knock the $17 billion global customer experience, customer measurement process, and snake oil camps or whatever. Measuring human perception is more complex than humans realize. Ironically, I'm moving on. I'm skipping on. I'm going to the next paragraph. Boxing is a well-known and easy to see example of perception's influence. Ali's "I'm the greatest" wasn't quantified. It wasn't quantifiable. Example: Ali didn't fight every human on the planet. Ali fought just a small portion of people. Like Ali's claim that I am the greatest, it's not supported by anything other than in boxing. So Ali is the greatest in this super defined, the super scoped out or niched portion of boxing. Like he was a title fighter. So when he's saying he's the greatest, oh hey, this ironically, or yeah, maybe ironically, goes back to my point on a level of depth. He is the greatest, and that's where his statement stopped, right? But the reality is, he is the greatest within America, or I suppose he fought Rumble in the Jungle. Okay, well he fought within this one boxing league. There's three titles. He fought within this one time period, and he only fought boxers. Like he didn't fight people from Siberia, or he didn't fight people from Mexico. Oh gosh, I made that up. He didn't fight everybody. He's fought this tiny little portion of humanity, and this super specific. Like I'm not sure how to label all the different layers of specificity that are actually underlying this "I'm the greatest" claim. He wasn't the greatest. It is impossible for him to be the greatest, but he said it anyway, and I'm on board. I agree that Ali was awesome, right? That's what we're talking about here. He was able to say it, and it has trickled throughout history. It has percolated throughout the planet that Ali is the greatest. Like we think of Ali as the greatest. There's no proof of Ali being the greatest, even though he was the champion and he was the greatest at this one very niched or very scoped out, very defined thing. Okay, yeah, that's a bit of a rabbit hole, but Ali being the greatest, it's dependent on a measure of depth, and it's super high level. You put any depth, you go deep onto it. Just one notch. Like outside of boxing, Ali wasn't the greatest, right? Ali was only the greatest within boxing, and only within this the heavyweight class. That maybe little boxers were more technically proficient than Ali, right? They would be the greatest. It's super interesting. Like what is said and what it means are totally disconnected. And that's, oh gosh, this is a major rabbit hole, but this is why I wanted to do the live. Like what I'm writing is just it's the tip of the iceberg, and what's going on underneath is what I want to express in these live feeds. There's oh my gosh, just an awesome thing to think about. I'm recentering. I'm going back. Oh my gosh, I'm not sure how to move the screen share. Oh, done. Okay. I'm going to go back to it. Boxing is well known and an easy to see example of perception influence. Ali's "I'm the greatest" wasn't quantified or quantifiable. Ali didn't fight everybody on the planet. He fought a small portion of people. Ali knew that he wasn't great at other things, and I'm not going to go into that portion, but he was political, right? And he was he represented more than boxing. Like there's a whole bunch of layers that go on here, and that's one of the greatest parts of Ali's story. It's more than just boxing. It's all the other stuff that makes him awesome. Because I say it, it's now on you to prove me wrong. Kicker: your ability to prove me right or wrong is an equal measure of your free time and your endurance. I can say whatever I want, and you can't stop me, right? So what does that mean? What does that mean that you can't stop me from saying whatever I want? It means that facts are actually less important than the strategy that I'm applying when I speak. I can say whatever I want, and then it's on you to say that I'm wrong. Why? Because that's how influence works. Like I can just talk and there's nothing you can do about it. Oh my gosh, which ties back into Ali with the things that he cared about, the things that he was pushing. Like you can say whatever you want, right? And then the person that there's a chronological dependency on this. The person that says it first has the advantage, like the high ground kind of advantage. And then the people that are coming afterwards to prove them wrong, they're at a disadvantage. And even if you win, it doesn't matter because the person on the high ground, the person that's speaking first, can just keep talking. Like it's a loop. This whole our society, like saying that facts matter, it's an illusion. Facts are like the least important portion of factual claims, right? And it's not a new thought. It's like our legal system is built around what I'm talking about now. There's a reason that you're innocent until proven guilty. Like it doesn't matter what the facts look like. The assumption is that facts are less important than interpretation. Oh my gosh, and that's what I'm speaking to here. High probability, what I'm describing in this this slightly complicated, fairly complicated description. I am going down the same path the American founders. High probability, I'm going down the same intellectual path that the founders went on when they set up the legal system the way it is. Why? Because facts don't matter. They're less important than interpretation. They're less important than perception. And that's super interesting. I hope for more Americans to catch on to that portion. And it's fun. It's fun to think about. Okay. Where am I at? I am past this point to understand. Oh my gosh. Nope, I'm going up a paragraph. Because I say it, it's now on you to prove me wrong. Kicker. Your ability to prove me right or wrong is an equal measure of your free time and your endurance. Why? Because you can prove me wrong and I'll just say it again. Ha ha ha. Joke's on you. Example. You prove me wrong and I could just say it again. What if I say it in a funny, viral way? What if I say it in a public way where you can't unhear it? Like, what if I'm at a forum? What if I just talk a bunch of smack? Right? If I'm funny, if I'm good looking, people are going to listen to me more than somebody that's not good looking. So for no factual reasons whatsoever, just my presentation strategy, I'm going to start to dominate that conversation. I'm going to start to win, regardless if I have anything to back it up or not. It doesn't matter, right? Or it does matter, but it's less important. It's the foundation. People only see the building you build on top of the foundation. Right, and that's what matters, right? The measure of a good structure or bad structure, it's visual. People will look at it, and in 5 seconds they'll say that's good, and in 5 seconds they'll say that's bad. They don't see any of the underneath stuff, and that's what we're speaking to here. We're speaking to the underneath stuff. Okay, I am past this point of understanding, and I now spend a fair amount of my cycles considering why humans are naturally set up like this. Why is it so easy to mess with people, right? Like why don't we have calluses, like natural default evolutionary calluses that prevent this kind of manipulation? And that sounds like a bad word, but I'm not saying it as such. It's just perception. Like I can influence your perception, you can influence my perception, and there's essentially no way to isolate yourself. There's no way to defend yourself from the perception that I'm trying to instill onto you. Oh my gosh, this is probably a bad Clockwork Orange, right? Like there's no way that's a reality. Like perception actually works like that. In the movie they have that creepy holding his eyes open. Well, you don't actually have to go to that extreme. That actually, functionally speaking, that is how perception works. Your eyes are open. You're watching me right now. Yeah. Okay. Example. People isolating themselves tend to lead to weird outputs, a step towards crazy. Going crazy without human interaction likely supports my fundamental perception exposure mentioned in my last paragraph. And that's basically saying oh my gosh, that's like a bad paragraph. Yeah, this is me trying to describe how it looks visually for me, because I think in visuals. Trying to put it into words. it rarely works out. It's a major downgrade. Um, People isolating themselves. So I worked at the VA and I had the opportunity, I had the amazing life-changing opportunity to sit down and drink a cup of coffee with 30 some odd thousand veterans. And that's a true story that actually happened. And it became super obvious after a while who lived by themselves. Right. And who had a great family or a great support network. And yeah, you could measure that without talking to them, just like observationally, just in their mannerisms, like in the vibe that they put off. You could tell who was isolated. You could tell who talked to people frequently, like for nothing unique to them. I guess now I'm thinking about it visually again. I'm picturing it like a field in physics, right? Like it's not the matter on top of something. There's like a background field. Isolation, I picture it like a field. Like you take any person, you put them in that isolated situation, and all sorts of goofy things happen because the isolation itself, that the goofiness of the isolation functions kind of like a field in physics, right? Like, yeah, that's confusing. Uh, yeah. So, okay, where I was going with that. So if actually being by yourself, if actually, the one situation where we can say that our thoughts are not influenced by other human beings, they're still influenced by all the environmental variables that go out there. But in the isolation, you walk out to Antarctica and you live by yourself for a couple of years. Like you are isolated from other human interactions, and high probability you're going to come back goofy. You're going to come back doing odd things. And this would be measurable by people saying, hey, he's goofy or she's goofy, whatever it may be. It's super obvious. And as far as I can tell, it happens for all peoples and all cultures everywhere on planet Earth, right? So whatever we're talking about something that humans are naturally, like all human beings are naturally exposed to this goofy kind of variations of it's like a field of perception, like this isolation, like the bad things that happen from this isolation applies to all cultures, all places on planet Earth. And as far as I can tell, it's been like that for all of human history, right? So this field, that's just how I'm describing it. I don't know what the actual term is. This field is ever present. Super interesting. I personally would like to scope it out. And that's kind of what I'm talking to a little bit here in this quick newsletter post. Okay. Scoping out the perimeter of personal perception is fun to do, right? Because it's crazy. Like, why do you think the way you think? And the default assumption, most of the people I talk to haven't thought about it, which means they are not aware of what they think and why they think it, right? And it's realistic to say that's a vulnerability, and saying that vulnerability is good or bad, that is a different calculation altogether. Because as far as I can tell, everybody's got it everywhere on planet Earth. Like, and this is what I meant, like the field. It's every, like, yeah. I'm curious to find out why. Like, why is this so easy to do? It seems counterintuitive. Oh my gosh, if somebody's got a good answer for that, toss it in the comments. It would be awesome. Scoping out the perimeter of our personal perception is fun to do. Interesting thought. How would somebody perceive things without a personal scope of their personal perception? They would assume that they thought what they thought without a clue that somebody else thought it for them. And that speaks to my last verbal point here a moment ago. Like, if you haven't invested the time into thinking why you think the way that you think, well, then you would have no idea if somebody was inspiring you to think what you think. Like, you'd be ignorance is bliss. Like, you would oh my gosh, like at this point of my understanding, I struggle to remember what that was like, assuming that at some point in my life I was in that level of understanding. Like, if I was, I don't remember it, but like, what, oh my gosh, this is a slight deviation, but still it comes back to what we're talking about here. Personally, me, Jonathan Geyer, I have a hard time remembering what it was like in my previous iterations of perception. Like, how did I Oh, easy to relate to example. I'm a business owner now. What was it like to be an employee work? Right, like that's a separate perception. And on the super high level, oh gosh, now I can speak to the level of the level of depth and perception. Remembering what it was like to be an employee. Because as a business owner, like I got to be uber responsible, and if things go bad, it's my fault. Like, even if somebody else does it, it's my fault. And that's this extreme ownership. Jocko, you're awesome. This extreme ownership portion is, I don't know, I consider like a default of business ownership, or the desired default of business ownership. So, from this current extreme ownership perspective, what was it like to be an employee where problems weren't my fault, where I could take off and go home, where the biggest problem in my life was utilizing all my PTO before I lost it? Like, these other considerations. What was it like to be here thinking of more isolated and thinking of me in comparison to my current perception of being up here and thinking about everybody else? Like, it's hard for me now that I'm up here to go backwards empathetically and walk in everybody else's shoes. I still do it, and it's still, I pull it off. Measuring my success by their responses, I'm pulling it off great. But on a personal, a deep level, you forget stuff, right? Yeah. And I would tie all. Oh my gosh, I can tie this made up on the fly here statement back to the totality of the article itself. Like, how do you know what you're thinking? Maybe I planted a seed on purpose. This is, oh my gosh, this sounds kind of crazy, but it comes up. I use this metaphor in work quite a bit. You build the labyrinth so the mouse finds the cheese the way you wanted the mouse to find the cheese. Like, the mouse finds the cheese independently, but they did it the way that I wanted them to do it, right? And that's what we're talking about here. Like, are you the mouse? Are you the person building the walls? Spoiler, it's both. It's both. With that being said, there's oh gosh, I was just picturing Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but that's how we're going. I'm just picturing a pyramid. That 1%, that person on the top, high probability that the people on the bottom of this, you have the one on the top and the 99 on the bottom, whatever it may be. There's actually a level of ignorance that comes with that. Like, on the oh my gosh, deviation, but the ignorance is bliss portion. Being on the bottom has all sorts of advantages that being on the top doesn't have. Example, like being a business owner and knowing that anything bad that happens is your fault. Well, people on the bottom don't have that, right? Their perception was yeah, I'm not sure how to conclude that. The perception on the bottom has perks, right? There's negatives there, but there's awesome benefits to not worrying about what everybody else is thinking. Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is cool. Okay, well, I'm about to end this. If there is comments, I can't see them. Why? Because I don't know how to work this. I'm new. Yeah, sweet. Okay, well, this is recorded. I am gonna share this in another post at some point. Yeah. I will. This is awesome. I'm gonna do it again next week. You guys have a great day. Thank you. Subscribe.